Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the latest event in our UWCSEA Kishore Mahbubani Speaker Series. My name is Sinead Collins, and it is my pleasure to introduce this special event in our series, held for the first time using this remarkable technology. In the room this evening, we have Carma Elliot, our College President and host for the evening, accompanied by our two student panelists, Ruth Iambo and Anthony Shen. We also have a small audience of students and staff, all observing the latest safe management measures. Joining us from London, we have our special guest, Faith Abiodun, the incoming Executive Director of UWC International. I will leave it to Carma and Faith himself to give a more complete introduction, but just to say what an honor and a pleasure it is to have him join us this evening. This week, 50 years ago, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, then Prime Minister of Singapore, opened our UWC. Opening the second school after Atlantic College in Wales effectively began the global UWC movement, now proudly spread across the globe with 18 sister schools and colleges united by our common mission. How fitting it is to kick off our special Founders Week celebrations with a conversation with UWC International about the movement, our mission, its past, and its future. Carma, Faith, Ruth, and Anthony will have a conversation for about 40 minutes, covering topics suggested in advance by our students. We will then open to questions from our audience here in Singapore and from those of you joining us online. Please enter your questions into the Q&A, and I will ask them directly to Carma, Faith, and our students. It should make for a really interesting evening. Once again, thank you for joining us, and over to you, Carma.
Sinead, it's my enormous pleasure to welcome Faith to join us this evening and to welcome him to the UWCSEA community as the incoming Executive Director of the International Office and the International Movement. What I'd like to do first of all, as the College President, is to welcome our audience as well here in the room and online, and to ask, first of all, our two student panelists, so Anthony and Ruth, to introduce themselves. So if I could start with Anthony, could you say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm currently a grade 12 IB student on UWCSEA East Campus, and I joined the school in grade 9, and before that, I grew up in Taiwan.
And turning to Ruth.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruth Iambo and I'm a Namibian scholar from Dover campus. I'm very honored to be part of the panelists joining Faith Abiodun and Carma Elliot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth and Anthony. So it's my pleasure to just say a few words about Faith and then ask Faith to say a few words about himself as well, to give us some greater context to his experience and his knowledge and what brought him to the UWC movement. So I have always been very struck since I first had the privilege of being able to talk to Faith as somebody who sits on the UWC International Board. One of the first things when I heard Faith's name, of course, was to Google him and find out a little bit more about him. So, and you know, Faith has his own website. I highly recommend to everybody to have a look there as well around what is so very inspiring about Faith, and particularly the journey that he's been on that's brought him to our movement, and tonight to be able to speak to our community as well. I think one of the most important and impactful things that I saw on your website back a few months ago, Faith, was that what you said about advantage and disadvantage. And you said in particular, I am convinced that there are no disadvantaged people in life. There are only people who refuse to make the most of the resources available to them, which I thought was a very strong statement in terms of your worldview and the kind of opportunities that you want to build and be part of as well. Your website also talks about you as somebody who is engaged in education, in social enterprise, as a leader in those areas, as an entrepreneur, a commentator on international affairs, an analyst, a writer, a speaker, somebody who started their career in journalism. Before that, you did a BA in geography. You have a master's from Syracuse, You have such a broad and also a very deep experience in so many areas that I think we're going to have a very rich conversation this evening, and in particular around the kind of transformative impact that you've been looking for in all of those areas of your previous career as well. I think what's also interesting to me as a previous public servant is the work that you've done to bring greater collaboration in Africa, in particular through Future Africa, and the work between citizens and their governments, and the role of the public sector in developing public sector leaders who act with integrity and work to build trust with government. The work that you've done to build a model African Union as well, fascinating work there. The Speech Academy as well, and giving young people confidence to present themselves in that way. So as you can see, I've done my homework, but I don't want to leave you without anything to say as well to our audience, and to introduce yourself and what you would like to let us know about you. So can I turn it over to you, Faith?
Absolutely, Carma. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and Anthony and Ruth, brilliant to get a chance to meet you as well and to have this conversation. I'd like to start by saying happy birthday to UWCSEA. Glad that we can celebrate this 50th anniversary with you, and I'm excited to be able to help you launch this week. And you've earned the right to have a big party, and I hope you truly enjoy your celebrations this weekend, especially on Wednesday. Carma, thanks a lot for inviting me, and for everyone else working behind the scenes to make this week a really great celebration. Thank you for your work. I'm really excited to be joining the UWCSEA campus for this week, and especially for the Kishore Mahbubani Speaker Series. And again, thanks a lot to Kishore Mahbubani for his work in helping to seed the foundation for what we're doing today. I joined UWC International officially only about 2 weeks ago, and I'm enjoying getting up to speed and learning a lot, as much as I can, about the movement. I'm glad that I had a good-ish foundation, a good understanding about the UWC movement before my time, and I'm excited to be able to kick off this conversation today. And so a bit about myself. I'll describe myself as the son of two first-generation scholars. Both of my parents were the first in their families to have any or a good education at all, and it came through blood, toil, sweat, and tears. My father in particular has talked quite a few times about his journey, and having been the second of 14 children, and the only one to have completed a high school education. And he's, from the day I was born and from the day I knew anything about my dad, he's talked consistently about toil and about the hard work and the foundations of a good journey. And really his path and the struggles he went through in securing the education that he did, and the roles that his mom in particular played in helping him get that education. When you grow up as a young boy in Nigeria, listening to that story, and you are surrounded by a lot of hardship and difficulty as well, you learn to balance your privilege with a sense of responsibility. And I talk about privilege not because my family was wealthy, but because we had education. And that was the leveler. It was the absolute game changer in my life. And so when I had the chance to launch my career as well, it was almost natural that I would gravitate towards education as a space in which to make impact. And so, yes, I kicked off in journalism and I eventually went into nonprofit management, but I ultimately always found my way back into the classroom. I'd actually begun to teach for the first time when I was an undergrad. And so as I was doing my undergraduate degree in geography, I was equally a part-time geography teacher at a high school in the same city. So I would take my classes 9 to 11 in the morning, and I'll get on the road to the other school to go teach a high school class. And I did that consistently for a couple of years. I ended up teaching at 4 different schools part-time in Nigeria before I then obviously founded my own school, the Speech Academy, bringing in my own bit of education as well, and then outsourcing teachers to schools as well to do this work. And when I was doing my master's degree in the US, I was equally a volunteer teacher at a middle school in Syracuse, New York. So I've always been around schools. And I had the great privilege of working at African Leadership Academy. And one of the first people that I met when I arrived at African Leadership Academy was a gentleman named Demeke Wondemagen. And Demeke is from Ethiopia. And Demeke was one of the first people who introduced me to the UWC movement, being an alum of, guess which school? UWCSEA. And so Demeke was one of my first colleagues who spoke to me about UWC, and another of my colleagues, a gentleman called Mopati, who also went to Lipochon, UWC in Hong Kong. And so I'd had this early introduction to UWC and really building a sense of the importance of this movement, really the global nature of this movement. And I had the great privilege myself to work with students from Waterford, Kamplaba, UWC in Southern Africa, and having the chance to host them at my place of work for 4 years consistently, and seeing the energy, the drive, the ideas that they had, it was almost inevitable that at some point I would find my way into this movement. And so I'm so glad that it's worked out this year. What's brought me into UWC in particular, and why am I excited to have the chance to do the work that I get the chance to do now? Firstly, it was the mission. And it's a bit cliche, but it's almost impossible to look away from a mission that is so clear and so powerful in how it is structured, and the chance to make education a force. It grabs at the heart, and I'm excited that I have the chance to be a part of this. So the mission was the first thing that attracted me. Secondly, I'll talk about the global impact. The fact that UWC has been around and has done so much work, you simply just look at the alumni stories. And I was going through some of the alumni stories and that were shared with me as well from SEA. And it's just incredible seeing people across various sectors, across various countries, doing such good work, delivering on the promise that they showed at the beginning of their journeys. And that's very exciting for me. But I'm not here to simply celebrate the past. There's a lot of work to do as well in shaping the future of education and shaping the future of our societies. And one thing I'm fully convinced about, Carma, and I don't want to go too much into this yet, because I know we have a lot to talk about, but I'm convinced that whatever the future of education looks like, that UWC will play a very important part in shaping it. And I'm glad that we are in this important space right now to make that difference. So let's get this conversation going, and I'm very keen to hear how we bring this to life.
Thank you very much, Faith, for that very inspiring introduction to, as you say, our conversation. And you talked there about, the toil and the hard work that your father talked about. And I think we're going to get onto that later when we talk about the IB diploma and perhaps, that as being the future of education and some of the work that's being done on reimagining education and assessment and all of those areas as well. So we're going to start off by talking about the future of the movement and the mission. There has, of course, been quite a backlash against globalization and, some real sort of fissures in global politics and geopolitics in the last few years. And the modalities of teaching and learning have been challenged. Our sort of traditional teaching and learning been challenged by the COVID pandemic. Big focus on what that means for the future, and what lessons have we learned from that. So I wonder if you'd like to say a little bit at this stage around the relevance of a UWC education. You talked about, that we are part of the future and that reimagining. Could you say a little bit more about what that actually means in your context?
Of course, and anyone who's paying attention would realize that we are going through one of the waves that reflect a little bit about of the waves we've had in history, and good students of history would understand that nothing lasts forever, and that it's important that we capitalize on a good crisis when we observe it being played out. And this is one of the waves that will propel us into a future that we must not just observe, but we must shape. The world itself has gone through different phases of jostling, trying to figure out what is the right way to shape our common existence. Do we go nationalist? Do we go globalist? And right now we are seeing a wave in which people are focusing intently on national politics and national identity, almost at the expense of our shared humanity. And that must never alter the mission or the approach of UWCs. UWCs are in existence to bring us closer together because our lives are ultimately intertwined. Whatever happens in Asia impacts us in Africa. Whatever happens in Europe impacts us in the Americas. And so I do not see a world in which we revert and lose the progress that we have made. I want us to continue to lean in to the sense of shared partnerships about what our future looks like. If you look at political crises that have sprung up in parts of the world, or climate crisis or economic crisis, they're never limited to those countries. They always impact many other countries. And so the UWC mission comes into sharper focus when you look at the way the world is going. And the pandemic has done a lot towards there. Lots of positives that we can take from what this last year and a half has looked like, or 2 years almost. There are lots of negatives as well. But I'd like us to focus on what this means and the opportunity it creates for us to lean into the future. If our education gets a chance to become more personal, become more tangible, it's a positive. So I'm excited that we can look at our mission and say, this is still relevant. This is still powerful. This is even more relevant today, considering the way in which the world is going. And as countries, retreat into their corners and protect what is uniquely theirs, we get a chance to look at our shared humanity and say, we still want to continue to engage. That must never change. And I'm happy that UWC stays consistent in that commitment to shared humanity.
Maybe if I may just quickly ask a follow-up question, Faith. So some of the challenges that there are these days around borders being closed, changing sort of travel restrictions, immigration restrictions, and so on, has meant some real challenges to some of the schools in Asia. So particularly Isaac, and of course for some time now, Changshu in China and Lipochun as well. What do you see the impact of that being for the UWC movement? I mean, how, if we're unlikely in the future to be as mobile as we were able to be in the past, and we have some restrictions perhaps of for students moving around the world, what kind of things do you think you would like to see the movement doing to address those kind of challenges? How do we help our fellow sister schools and colleges in those countries?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and we can't shy away from the fact that there is a tangible loss when the school community begins to look slightly different than what it should look like or what it has looked like. When you are a deliberately diverse community, creating opportunities for students from all parts of the world, all socioeconomic backgrounds, to be in the same physical space, you lose something when you can't create that. And so I am saddened, deeply so, that our schools are not able to reflect on their campuses the diversity that they reflect on paper and in each other's hearts. So I'm hoping strongly that our borders are reopened as quickly as possible, that we do not retreat into our spaces, but that we really allow travel to reoccur the way it has always been. And I'm really, really enthusiastic about that coming up. There's slight movements in the Asia region in that direction. We've had some peaks and troughs recently, but I'm hoping that our borders can be reopened shortly. But beyond that, what can we do in the interim? We can't cross our fingers and just wait for the future to happen. We have to shape that future. And so our technology has not fully advanced to the level where we can recreate live human experiences, virtually. But we're getting closer and closer. And I think the pandemic is pushing us and pushing our tech leaders into designing newer products that will help us experience, to some extent, some of the things that we might lose out without physical proximity. So my hope is that we can stay on that cutting edge of technology while geopolitics continues to go through its waves. We've got to equally stay on the edge to figure out what else is out there that can allow us to connect. Technology is rapidly advancing, and I think that we must just lean into it. Let's not shy away from tech at all. Let's figure out what tools are available that allow us to connect. I don't want any student from any part of the world to feel as though their UWC experiences, of lesser quality than someone else who had the chance to travel, to physically be on a campus. It's not going to be the same, but we must recreate the elements of our community that must never go away because we cannot physically travel. So there's a challenge for UWC here to discover and really unearth what else we can do to allow our connections to stay strong in spite of border closures.
Ruth, you had some experience of delays coming into Singapore last year. Perhaps you'd like to ask a question of Faith or explain a little bit about your own experience.
So yes, my experience with arriving to UWC was quite tricky in the sense that I was back home and I was doing my grade 11. I was about to write a final exam. So it was quite tricky in the sense that I couldn't just fully leave school back home to fully focus on UWC online because I didn't know whether I was able to travel or not. And I couldn't also leave school because I had a final exam that was approaching. So it was quite hard years to get to school because I missed the whole of first term, adding up the time I did online and the time I spent during quarantine. So I ended up missing a whole first term of school. And then that idea of coming in late at school is also about, it's everyone is already evolving and everyone is already like ready and they all understand what's happening. But then when you join a school, it's different because you're still finding your way around. You're still understanding like how the school works, the system, the IB diploma. It's all different because when I came from home, I didn't know much about what IB was. Yes, I did know there's something called IB, but I didn't especially like know what is IB, how does it work. So coming in late did put me at a disadvantage, yes, and not only me, other scholars as well that came in quite late. But then, well, like this year it was different because the school was quite prepared for it and they helped the scholars, like different scholars coming early and they had everything prepared. On top of that, now that I've gave you a bit of context of what happened, there's also one question that I wanted to ask. I feel like you have answered it slightly, but this is slightly different because it's environmental steward, especially like focuses on that. So the UWC mission is clearly aspirational to be a force for peace and sustainability. Can we hope for stronger ties and policy guidance between the different colleges and schools and the International Office for Collective Guidelines regarding environmental stewardship especially? So this is a question that comes from students because we know how important the voices of students are to you. So this is a question that comes from the students that work within the service office. So we wanted to hear your take on that as well.
Thank you, Ruth, and thanks for sharing a bit of your journey as well. There's nothing more powerful than hearing from those who are on the receiving end of policies and all of that. And I can't imagine that a school transition is easy, especially the way you've described, breaking out of one system into the other. So hats off to you. Look at you 1 year afterwards being on stage and thriving as you are. And so congratulations for having come out better. And I think that your experience, your lived experience, makes you a stronger leader going forward because you will be able to empathize with others who are making similar transitions. The world might not get much easier, but we need people with resilience and a determination to push forward. So hats off to you and thanks for sharing that story. How do we coordinate or how do we find a common approach on topics of sustainability? I think one of the most important waves that we are seeing in the world right now is the awareness of young people around issues of climate resilience and climate change and the determination to want to make an impact. Every generation, inherits a world, but they decide how they live that world. And your generation, our generation, has inherited a world that is in crisis, a climate crisis. And the first thing we can do is to properly educate ourselves about what is happening around us. Heartbreakingly, I was reading the news out of the US over the last 2-3 days on the number of deaths that have been linked to the tornadoes that swept across 6 US states. It's devastating because when you pick up that story, it's not simply more than 100 who are dead in Kentucky. Those are families, those are parents, children, those are businesses that have been shut down. The impacts of that crisis, which was a single event across 6 states in the US, it will impact many parts of the world as well. And so we're realizing increasingly how interconnected we are, and no crisis in one part of the world is isolated to that part of the world. So what is our role as schools, as students, as the international office, supporters around the movement? I think the first thing we have to do really is to ensure that we are creating the spaces in our schools to not simply talk about these issues at face value, but to really lean into them. Our curriculums have to reflect an awareness that this is not a normal time in the world, that this is a crisis, and the more we can do to educate ourselves, to really understand what is going on, and not just discuss them the way they're discussed on the news or with headlines. We need to really understand what are the interconnected issues around our politics, around our geographies, around our economics, our societies, our cultural practices that influence the changing of our climate and influence the depletion of our natural resources. So education and awareness for me is number one. Second is to find a common voice in our action plans. What exactly can we do, and how do we ensure that we are being deliberate about our actions? We are creating spaces and allowing kids to get outdoors, to discover the environment, to find spaces in which they can have impact, whether that becomes through the CAS option of the IB, or whether that becomes through individual projects that students choose to launch. We must create space for people to take action. And once you take action, we must make a lot of noise about the work that we're doing so that we can sensitize populations that are not as aware of what we're doing. The beautiful thing about UWC is that we are a leadership movement. And so we must lead in creating awareness on our campuses. We must lead in creating spaces to act, and we must lead in creating spaces for others to learn what we are doing and to get better sensitized about the issues. So what I want you to look at is I'm an ally in this work. I'm a person who who strongly understands. I studied geography, as was highlighted, and I've been on this issue for a very, very long time. I want us to be aware that this time has got to be different. Let's teach about the issues. Let's create space to act about the issues, and let's speak consistently and educate others about what needs to be done as well.
Looking forward to hearing more on how we can work together to connect those dots across the movement and raise voices as well. Looking forward to lots of noise on this particular issue. I think it's happening anyway, but I think particularly after COP26, the what next, the beyond the blah, 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 as Greta said, is so important. And as you say, a fantastic opportunity for UWC to engage on the issues as a movement as well. I'm going to ask Anthony if you'd like to ask one of the questions, particularly if perhaps if we move on to UWCSEA in the movement and our role as a large school in the movement.
So coming as a student into UWCSEA, it's obviously quite different from many of the other UWCs. Like the other UWCs are mostly composed of scholars, and they're mostly 16 to 18. While UWCSEA has a different educational model in the sense that it believes that by instilling these values in younger children, maybe from kindergarten, maybe from the primary ages, maybe even from the middle school ages, it can sort of educate these people to instill in them the values that we want of peace and sustainability, so they can go out similar to students in other schools in order to become change makers in a wider world. So I'm wondering, what is the role or the position of UWCSEA in the UWC movement, given that UWCSEA has quite a different educational model to some of the other schools, and whether you see whether there's a tension in that, or whether there's actually an opportunity for collaboration and learning.
I think it's quite telling that UWCSEA was the second school in the movement. So this foundational element of building from K through 12 has been around for such a long time now. We've got the chance to get used to it. And if nothing else, it's a great experiment in helping us understand how the UWC values can really grow with a person from a younger age. And so I'm enthusiastic about what SEA has been doing and will continue to do in really building students up from such a young age. If you've got infants who are learning the UWC values and discovering that very, very early, that can only be positive. And so I think SEA has got to be very, very proud of what you have built and what you have sustained with that consistency over 50 years. So let's be proud of what we've built. Let's be grateful for this experiment, and let's create more learning opportunities for other schools in the movement and for everyone else around the world to really see the consistency that we can build over a period of time, and let's share. The big mandate, I believe, for SEA right now is how much can we share? How much can you share from this successful experiment of training students from the bottom up and giving them space? Now, SEA contributes immensely to the movement, not just in terms of the size of your student body, not just in terms of the scholarship that you're developing, your alumni body, the leadership that Carma demonstrates on the board and on education topics alongside everyone else who's doing this work. You've got a lot to be proud of, and I'm excited that I have the chance to walk side by side you in helping to imagine what the future looks like. But if there's a challenge that I can put up, it will be how much can you share about the work that you are doing? If you've got inventions that you're trying out, you've got lessons that you've been able to discover from the work that you have done, please do share so that the rest of the movement can benefit as much as possible from your immense work. So for me, it's congratulations for everything you've done. Let's do a lot more, and let's share a lot more about what we are doing. You will always have an important place in the movement. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure that this entire year will give us a chance to really celebrate all the successes of 50 years and imagine what comes next.
Ask a follow-up question, Anthony?
What's quite interesting for me as a student who sort of come into the UWC movement as a day student is that I see UWC as sort of a microcosm of sort of our world, right? Because of the diversity of the students. Before, I haven't had the opportunity to meet students from almost all continents and dozens of countries across the world. And I see UWCSEA and the other UWCs as a good opportunity for that cross-cultural and cross-national connection to happen. So I'm interested to hear your perspective. Given that the UWC movement was sort of founded in the wake of the Second World War, what values could be transferred to our modern world, given our new set of challenges that we see, the fracturing of the global order that was built up post 1945, and what values still endure in our 21st century?
That's fantastic, Anthony. You're asking a brilliant question. After World War II, the world was committed to ensuring that this does not happen again, right? And everyone was having that conversation. Again, from the founding of the UN, there was a clear emphasis that the world cannot go down this road again. We've still had fractures in our world, as anyone who studied history would know, and we've had enough uprisings that could have spiraled out into a bigger crisis than what we've experienced so far. But the world has not devolved into another world war. Now, the UWC movement coming out of that same commitment, the question was, what do we need to do through education to ensure that we can build a more peaceful world, a more sustainable world, a more just world? What are the values that underpin that? Firstly, it is humanity. The fact that we do not look at each other as enemies inherently. Nelson Mandela, who is our honorary president and who lived a fabulous and inspiring life, he spoke the words and he said, no one is born hating another person, right? People learn to hate, therefore they can learn to love. And so UWCs have been created to bring people into close proximity so that we can learn to love. That shared humanity, that commitment to say, we might have been raised in different neighborhoods. We might have imbibed different stories about each other and learned different false narratives about each other. But by being in the same space, by sharing stories, by sharing experiences, by growing together, we can discover lots of similarities between us. We can identify points of connection between us so that we can learn to love. That sense of shared humanity for me is a value that we must never lose. Secondly, there's a shared commitment to shaping the future. Everywhere you go, when you look at UWC students, look at both of you on stage, Ruth and Anthony, different backgrounds, different experiences, but we're having this conversation together. And you're here because you're looking into the future and determining to play a role in shaping what that future looks like. You don't simply want to live in a future that someone else creates for you. You want to co-create that future. We must never lose that sense of agency, that sense of possibility, that commitment that I will play a role. That is what my career has looked like so far. I could have been a little bit softer on some of the issues. I could have been a bit more passive, But that's not how I was raised, and that's not how I want to help others see what they can do. By my life and my example, and by your example, the shared commitment to doing things, we must never lose that value in the UWC community. And I'll say lastly, a connection to other people who are beyond our environment. We must never lose that. UWCs must always go out into the community. We must be seen, we must be heard, we must be known for what we stand for. So let's do the work in-house, but let's get out there into society as well and share our values with others. If we're simply a movement or simply a collection of schools that speak to ourselves only, we're not doing the world a favor. We have to be consistent in getting out there and sharing our values with people so that we can come along in this journey of what the future looks like. And I want to work with you, Anthony. I want to hear more about what you're doing. I want to hear more about your ideas and see how you will take these values into your community as well.
I just want to share a little bit of my experience coming into UWC that sort of might reflect that shared humanity. So I grew up in Taiwan, and Taiwan never really sort of exited the war with China. There's never been an official truce. And sort of growing up in Taiwan in that environment, there's sort of this portrayal of the other side as sort of the enemy. And I never really understood that. I sort of maybe instinctually sort of believed that, but I never really did. But coming to UWCSEA, coming to see sort of my classmates, some of which come from China, sort of just another human being that I can connect with, that have the same problems that I have, that have the same struggles that I have, that have the same values that I have, sort of reminded me of how valuable the UWCSEA mission is, and sort of challenged my preconception. And I think sort of reinforced the idea of that shared humanity. I think that was quite a valuable lesson for me, and I completely agree with you saying. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. You know, every generation, like I mentioned, has the chance to shape what their world looks like that they leave behind. And the fact that you're not choosing to simply inherit what has been handed down to you, but you're choosing now to decide for yourselves and for everyone else that comes around you what you think the future should look like. That's just beautiful. That's the power of the UWC. We break down those barriers, we create space for conversations, we create space for learning, and then we can go out into the world and do better, right? The more you know, the better you can act. And I'm glad that you are reflecting positively on what you have learned, and you're not simply, wishing it away or, making it just normal. It's not normal that you've had the chance to experience a different world than the one in which you were raised. So congratulations to you again for being, an active participant in your own education. Reflection is one of the most important things in your education journey, and your ability to reflect on your own growth. Let that be a value you don't lose. Let that be a habit that you don't lose. And I'm excited to hear what you're talking about. This is heartwarming.
So thank you. And very inspiring to hear what UWC values in action look like to you, Faith, and to hear from our students what they look like for them as well, and where the points of commonality are, and actually how we build on perhaps some different reflections on that, and whether it looks different in different parts of the world. It's an exciting discussion, and I hope very much that you'll have an opportunity to meet Anthony and Ruth in person if you're able to come to our 50th anniversary forum, which is Learning to Shape the Future, at the end of April, and it would be fantastic to have you as part of that discussion, as well as we learn together how we're going to shape the future. And so some of the questions that were submitted by the students and their brainstorming was looking at the relationship between the movement and the IB. So the movement was very much an early partner with the IB organization and the individual schools and colleges in developing the diploma. And it's obviously, there's been some discussions about the strategic review of the IB diploma and how it's evolving for the future as well. And the new Director General of the IB, Olli-Pekka Heinonen, spoke to the International Board and the International Council and spoke about educating the next wave of humanity and how different that might be. So some of the questions were around some of the challenges of the IB diploma itself, and we heard a little bit from Ruth about coming into a college and a two-year model, how challenging that can be if in fact you're not able to travel as freely as we used to do in the past. I wonder, did you want to ask a question, Ruth, about the IB diploma and its future and how it's evolving, how you would like it to evolve, maybe?
Yes, so I'd like to give a bit of context before you answer, right? So from my personal experience, I come from an entirely different educational system. And I think joining the IB was much of a surprise in the sense of the workload and just scaffolding myself around everything, the different subjects and the way you're supposed to write, the way you're supposed to answer all those different questions. And as a scholar, I can reflect and say that it's not just me, it has been many other people. So it is very hard to come from an entirely different background, educational system, and come in grade 11, you're doing the IB diploma, you are still learning your way around everything and you're still trying to understand everything. And at the same time, you're doing it. So that's a very great challenge faced by many other scholars. So I wanted to ask your take or your opinion on that, or how we can look into that challenge and look for a solution. So one thing that many other people has mentioned was like, or maybe bring in scholars in grade 10, for instance. But then I also want to tell you that some of the Cambodian scholars come in way earlier, so like grade 9, I think. And so they also start off early, but unlike some people, they come in grade 11 and they start. So I wanted to ask your take on that, and what do you think, how should the way forward look like?
Thanks for sharing that, Ruth. I sympathize strongly with students who come from, diverse backgrounds and have to assimilate a new system and have to learn. And I have seen that happen head on in my learning journey as well. When I have moved country and joined a different education system, I've seen people thrive while I questioned my own capacities and I questioned my own readiness for those systems. In particular, when I moved to the US to do my master's degree, and you would think I'll be much better prepared for, being in a different learning system. It was a shock to my system. Within the first few weeks of being in the school, I kept asking myself, how am I going to cope? Because when I'm in class, I can see people's hands go up every single time the professor asks a question, and I'm still trying to understand what that question means. And so I can really sympathize, and because I have been there as well. And even though I was studying at a much higher level than what IB students who are moving country are doing, I still struggled and eventually found my feet over time. So that's to say, I get it when you talk about these differences and experiences people have. When you come to the IB itself as a learning system, inevitably when you design a system for the world, it's impossible that the whole world gets it at the same level and experiences at the exact same level. We can look first of all to some of the merits of the IB in what it's designed to achieve, the opportunity to really even out the world in some kind of way, to give people a broad range of learning experiences that will allow them to thrive, not just academically, but socially and economically as well once they get out into society. This multidisciplinary approach to learning, for me, I find brilliant, inspiring. And the fact that UWC has helped to inspire the IB and played a very, very exciting role foundationally in what the IB has become, we can celebrate that and be proud of it. And as we move forward, there's a phrase that I took from my time at African Leadership Academy that I think I come back to quite often. And it's a phrase, desirable difficulty. It talks about a measure of difficulty, a measure of hardship that a young person must not only endure, but embrace and look forward to, because that is the kind of difficulty that can shape who a person becomes. We talk about resilience, we talk about hard work, we talk about commitment to making a difference. Some of those things are really, really bred through hardship, a measure of hardship. I think a student's learning experience should be desirably difficult, but not punitively so. It should not break you. It should not harm you. It should not force you to cross the line into a place of unsustainable living. So I want to learn a little bit more about how people are experiencing the IB curriculum and the learning journeys, so that we play safely in the space of desirable difficulty without pushing them into a space where they simply cannot cope. I don't believe that the curriculum by itself is designed to break anyone, but there might be elements of the delivery of that curriculum. There might be elements of the way our days are structured, the way our timetable is structured, the way our annual calendar is structured, where we can make adjustments to ensure that each person entering into a learning system gets a soft landing and then gets a chance to really embrace the measure of difficulty that they're being challenged to experience. From my time in the previous schools where I've worked as well, I can say that most people dislike the learning experiences as they go through it, and over time they come to appreciate the benefits of that learning system. So we must walk that fine balance between helping people understand the merits of what they're going through and then walk around the edges of those difficult learning experiences, whether that becomes, like you said, coming in a year earlier, whether that is having, there's lots of things that we can get into with glossaries that help people really, really understand what they're about to step into way before time. I want to get into that a little bit more and really understand the user experiences. I'm hoping that you, Ruth, can actually help me better understand from your experience the areas of the IB that you have really, really enjoyed, and the areas that you think we can do a little bit better, so that I'm more informed in the approaches that I help to espouse across the movement. But I think we should be proud of what we've built, and we should be determined to make it better so that we do not lose the people whom we're trying to shape.
Did you want to ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please. We were also very interested in some of your skills. So as Carma Elliot said, that when we heard that we are going to interview you and have the opportunity to ask you a few questions. Well, I know that you worked for African Leadership for quite a while, and you have done some amazing things with working with the youth from all over Africa, and you have established strong programs and foundations. So I was wondering, what skills have you obtained working with African Leadership Academy that you really want to see reflecting in UWC as a mission and just the different UWC colleges?
Ruth, this is brilliant. And I'm very honored to have you in this conversation with me, because you're reflecting a bit of my journey as well. I began my career as a journalist, and having the chance to ask good questions to senior leaders was one of the joys of my life, and really played a foundational role in who I've become today and who I continue to evolve into. So I'm honored on your behalf that you have the chance to have this experience as well and to grow through this. I've really appreciated the chance to develop my communication skills, both as a journalist and as a teacher, as a designer of programs. It's one of the skills that makes a huge difference in a person's life. And the more you practice writing and speaking, and importantly, listening, to be able to understand the in-betweens of a person's narrative, the better you are as an individual. So my communication skills are some of the skills that really delight me, because I've had the chance to grow by being in various spaces. Something I think that you and your peers might pay attention to a lot is this concept of design-based thinking and design-based creation, the ability to imagine a different reality and then design that reality before anyone else gets a chance to see it. It's one of the most delightful experiences you can have as an individual. And I've always been an entrepreneurial thinker, an entrepreneurial designer, and whether they've been in the businesses I've helped to create or the ways that I've helped others create their own businesses. So the chance I had to be what we call an entrepreneur as well at African Leadership Academy. When I had a primary job, I've always had a secondary job on that primary job. I've always found that extra space to create something and design something so that I can always leave a bit of me behind in any place where I've worked. And at African Leadership Academy, the Model African Union became the lasting legacy I was able to leave in that institution. And I'm super proud of what that work was, and the hundreds of young people I had the chance to work with over 8 years of doing that work. And so I want to challenge you and your peers as well to think about legacy. You are at the right age to be leaving your legacy behind, or to be designing what you want to be remembered for. Never let anyone define you by your youth. I've learned that age is not a proximal, it's not a proxy for experience, it's not a proxy for intelligence. As long as you can think up a good idea, you can think up something that you really want to leave behind, just go ahead and create it. It doesn't have to be great when you start, it can become great over time. And so for me, your communication skills are super important. Don't leave those behind. Your design skills are super important. Think of the world you want to leave behind and just do something about it. And every time I look back on my journey to date, I'm glad that I was an early starter. I'm glad that I've had spaces in which to create. I'm glad that I've been surrounded by people who have enabled my work and who have encouraged me and given me lots of feedback, positive and negative. I remember the times when I was told to stop doing what I was doing because it was distracting me from doing the other things I was supposed to be doing. And I responded by doing both excellently, so that I never give anyone an excuse to question my commitment. I never give an excuse to, to question my capacity, especially when you're a young person. It's the best time of your life. Your capacities are limitless. So dream big dreams and then put some foundations under those dreams and leave the world a much better place than it was when you came in. That's what you should take away.
You said all the things that make you glad, Faith. We are very glad that you found the UWC movement, and we particularly look forward to hearing more about your entrepreneurial spirit as well, and what you're going to bring with the movement. A little bit premature to think about what you're going to leave behind, so we'll focus on what you're bringing to us at the moment. So I think we're going to hand over to questions from the wider audience now. So I'll hand back to Sinead to manage that.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Karma and Anthony and Ruth. What a wonderful start to our evening. And we've got lots of questions coming in online. And I'm just calling on the students in the room now also to gather their questions. I'm going to start us off with one that has come in. It's a question for you, Faith, and it says, you have spoken about the importance of diversity at UWCs. How should UWC move education forward with regard to systemic injustices? Big question, Faith.
Big question, big question. Thanks for that, Sinead. Firstly, we've got to be sympathetic to people's lived experiences. We must never dismiss a person's concerns when they come up, because to do that is to demean their humanity, and that is not a way in which UWC should go or will go. So what I want to say to anyone who feels that there is a sense of systemic injustice, it'll be, first of all, speak out. There are platforms that are being put in place, or that have been put in place, firstly within schools, and obviously you must first direct your challenge or your experiences to the school in which you find yourself, because it's a disservice to that school if you speak about that school outside the borders of that school, but you do not give your school the chance to actually improve and learn from your experiences. So my first response would be, first of all, if you feel in your day-to-day experience that there is systemic injustice, speak up in the environment where you find yourself. Challenge your school, challenge your leaders. And if you do not find the capacity to challenge in the environment where you find yourself, the UWC International movement already has channels in place or safeguarding processes that allow people to speak up as well and share their experiences, so that we are paying attention to the things we should be paying attention to. So that, for me, is top level. Share your experiences. As a movement, what should our response be? We've got to respond with kindness. We've got to acknowledge and honor people's experiences, so that we do not continue to replicate what might be perceived or tangible injustices. And where we have the chance to do better, we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard as a movement. My personal commitment is to listen. I'm not coming in as a savior, as a hero, as a person who's going to fix all of our problems, but the first thing I can do is to honor you by listening and identifying the spaces in which we can do better. And once I have the option of actually doing better on behalf of everyone else, then you can count on me that I will help us all do better. But first of all, let's share what we're experiencing, and let's give each other the chance to do better. At a local level, begin with your school, and then when we get a chance to escalate, let's escalate to a higher level. But this is a movement that is very, very, very committed, much more than many others that I've experienced, to diversity, to allowing multiple voices to come to life, and to allowing us to do better, to reflect the world in which we live. So thanks for raising the question. Thanks for speaking up, and don't stop speaking up. Always speak up about injustices wherever you find them.
Hello, my name is Arushi, and I'm currently a grade 11 student at UWC Dover. I just want to start by saying that I'm very honored to be here today. Towards the beginning of the discussion, you and Ms. Elliott mentioned about how perhaps international cooperation and the global movement that UWC has had a couple of challenges that we've needed to overcome because of COVID-19. So I was wondering how you would feel that we as students should help overcome these challenges, especially as we embark into the world, to make sure that we don't stop being a part of the UWC movement after we graduate, and that we can continue to carry these values forward and expand UWC's outreach.
Hi, Rishi. Thank you for that question. Brilliant. And my challenge to you, first of all, will be carry on doing exactly what has brought you to the point where you are. You did not arrive here by chance. You did not arrive here by wishing it. You arrived here by putting some actual bricks into the ground and building yourself up to where you are today. The first challenge for any young person in this generation is to accelerate your own learning. Within and outside the classroom, accelerate your own learning. The world is rapidly evolving and it's not going to slow down. The pace of technology, the pace of climate transformation, the pace of education itself, the pace of political shifts, these things are not going to slow down. So you've got to really accelerate your own learning. And you have an immense opportunity to do that. You're surrounded by students from different parts of the world who have similar passions and drive and commitment to make a difference. Learn from them. Take full advantage of your teachers. They're not just teachers in the classroom, they're human beings with life experience as well. They come from different parts of the world. They've learned through their own learning experiences, their own living experiences in different places. Take full advantage of the support you've got on campus with you. And then you've got speaker series like this, the Kishore Mahbubani speaker series, where you have the chance to hear people from different parts of the world bringing their own experiences and learn, tap into that. And then once you begin to face your exit, you're thinking about the world out there. I think each person has got to, at some point, as quickly as you can, define a mission statement for yourself. Find a space in the world in which you think you can make a difference. It might be an interim hypothesis of how you are able to make a change in the world. Come up with that hypothesis. You want to impact education. You want to work on climate. You want to work on tech. You want to work on social issues. You want to work on poverty. You want to work on healthcare. Whatever it is, find that interim hypothesis and then begin to pursue that. Over time, you're going to get new information. You're going to meet new people. You're going to find new spaces in which you can make a difference. You might then make an adjustment in your approach, but that hypothesis will guide you as you exit UWC into the rest of the world. So don't ignore what got you to this point. Lean into it, tap into it, and accelerate your learning as much as you can.
Well, I hope you're having a great day, Faith. First of all, I would like to start with congratulating you in this new position and wishing you all the best. And thank you so much for believing on this mission that has changed my life. My name is Nayeli. I am a scholar from East Campus. And my question to you is, when I talked to my national committee about the fact that I was going to meet you, we were wondering about if you have a vision about promoting the UWC movement in places such as less developed countries or places that might have never heard about UWC. And can it be possible to repeat something like Dare to Dream?
Thanks so much for your question. Dare to Dream gives us a lot to be excited about, a lot to celebrate, because it shows the commitment of lots of people across the world, people with means, people with networks, people with reach, to ensure that a UWC education is not the best kept secret in the world. It's got to reach into all the crevices of the world, and to the extent that we can, we must go there. I'm excited. Look, last week I had the chance to speak at one of our external events, about our fundraising campaign to get more girls from Afghanistan and more boys from Afghanistan into UWC in the wake of what's happened there. And I think that's a brilliant commitment that the UWC community has made to ensuring that a UWC education is not denied to anyone, regardless of their backgrounds. Yes, I want to help us get even farther than we have reached so far. UWC cannot be restricted to only the countries where we have heard about it. The more opportunities exist for us to reach more people in more villages and more remote areas, in more cities and more countries, we must go there. We haven't covered the entire world yet, and so there's no reason to slow down until we've had a chance to do that. So you have my commitment. that I will work alongside our national committees and alongside people like you to identify spaces in which we can do more, we can reach more people, we can create more opportunities. And it's a challenge, it's a request to to our community externally. Help us go even farther than we have gone so far. And we've gone very, very far, but help us go even farther, help us reach even more people with means, with access to scholarships, with access to logistical support, education support, whatever it takes to expand this mission and get more people involved. Let's do it.
Hello, thank you, Faith, for your answer, and thank you, Anthony, Ruth, Ms. Karma, and Mr. Faith for being here. The questions I have, my name is David from the East Campus, and this question is unique to UWCSEA in the sense that you mentioned the idea of sort of a coexistence between the IB diploma and our grade 12 and grade 11 and 12 diploma. And the departments are thinking of doing the UWC's own graduating certificate. And as you mentioned that IB and UWC sort of started on the same routes and it's slowly diverging. Well, what's your opinion on the thought that perhaps we should have our own UWC diploma and whether we should keep IB as a part of our movement? Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's a very important question. I'll take a step back to the mission of UWCs. And the mission of UWC is to make education a force for peace and a sustainable future. The most important thing for me is that in the design and delivery of our education system, we are paying close attention to our mission. I don't think that we should begin by approaching the IB as anti-UWC mission at all. The IB has served a great purpose for the world and will continue to do so. I think that we have an opportunity to lean into the benefits of the IB, but never lose sight of our mission. And we must always find alignment between every possible option out there and the UWC mission. Importantly, when you leave a UWC, regardless of where on earth you attend a UWC campus, when you leave, are you better prepared? Are you fully equipped to face the challenges of the world out there? Are you fully equipped to thrive in college and beyond college? Have we set you up in the best possible way without breaking you? That's the foundation under which I'm underpinning my investigation and my awareness and my opening up the space to really understand what is the best way forward. Look, hats off to UWCSEA for investing in the question of what is the best possible way to send our students out there into the world. It's questions rather than answers that create good knowledge, real knowledge. So let's stay with the question a little bit. Let's understand the question. Let's come up with multiple options in which we might answer that question. And when we find the right answer, we're going to double down on that answer. But for today, mission comes first. Are we true to our mission? Are we delivering a model of education that reflects our founding? And secondly, are we preparing the young people who are under our stewardship to thrive in the immediate next steps in university and to thrive even beyond university? If we're sure that whatever we do delivers on both of those priorities, then let's go ahead and do them.
Thank you, Faith. I'd like to now ask another question, actually for Karma and for Ruth and Anthony, and indeed yourself, Faith. It's for all of you. And I'm going to guess that it's coming in from a parent, because the question is, what role do we parents, with all our varied experiences, play in the UWC movement? How can we facilitate our kids' transition to the UWC mission? So perhaps to begin with our students to get an answer to that to start out with, and Karma, and then Faith, I think we'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Share my personal experience with my exposure to the UWC mission. Basically, if my parents had not told me of UWCSEA in Singapore and sort of said, I think this will be a good fit for you, I would never have had the thought to apply. So I think parents sort of not only shape sort of the value that we have, as parents have shaped your values of the importance of education. The parents also expose us to opportunities that we as children might not see immediately in front of us. as sort of valuable for us. So I think that's the first role that parents play. I'm interested to hear what Ruth said.
So I'll start off with the idea that my parents didn't know anything about the UWC and what the UWC mission is. And I'm sure sometimes I probably explain a few stuff and they're still lost and they're like, we know you're getting the best education and we know you're having fun, so that's good enough. But then in terms of like what role like parents contribute with the whole UWC mission and everything, I think it's very important as a parent to actually, when a student, when your daughter or your son comes to you, whatever, when they come to you with, I've learned this and this, I think it's very important as a parent to reflect on that and ask a lot of questions about what they've learned and what this means to them and how the house environment is compared to what they've learned and how they are reflecting these things with friends and like family and like just what they have learned from UWC, from school, and how they are reflecting it in their day-to-day life. Because I'm part of an activity at school, which is Peace Builders, and I've met a few parents today who spoke about how their kids go home and speak about this. And I think it's a very good thing that as a person and as a group, we are able to install some values or some the UWC mission into kids and like teach them what it is and expose them to different perspectives. And I think that the role that parents can really play is being very enthusiastic, being very curious about what is my child learning and what is my child able to bring on the table and how am I going to help my child into shaping the perspective or the idea that they want to follow, and not just narrow it down or be like, oh, these are not our values, these are not our home values, but being very curious about what is my child learning from school and how is this impact their day-to-day life. So that's the role I think parents can really play into shaping their student and like helping them really evolve in the UWC mission.
Ruth and Anthony have been very eloquent, and Ruth, thank you very much for that and for talking about the role that parents play in admissions, and applying to the school. And I was also just thinking back to earlier today, I spent some time baking cookies with some parents as part of our 50th anniversary celebration. And actually, as we were sort of working in the kitchen, we were talking about the loss that some parents have felt from the COVID situation and all the safe management measures that we have to introduce, and the fact that they feel a little bit disengaged with the community that is such a big part of the choices that they made together with their children around admission into the school, and the commitments that often they've made as volunteers to supporting the school as well. So, and I think that really, that just that one simple conversation showed very much how much, that in our context as a K-12 school, and an international school of scale, how much that community matters to the whole family, over and above the excellence of the teaching and learning, the social connections and so on. It is that sense of loss that people feel if that community perhaps is a little bit challenged by some of the COVID regulations as well. So I think seeking a community of like-minded people, I think, is very important to many parents, and then to be able to exchange views about the future of learning within that context as well. I think that's such an important part. So I'm really glad that a parent asked a question on this discussion, which is all about reimagining learning and shaping the future of learning as well. So can I hand over to you, Faith, to say a few words on this?
It's a difficult act to follow Anthony and Ruth on this one, I must say, because they've been extremely eloquent and brilliant in their perspective. So you guys can as well take the seat and run the rest of the conversation. But I think two things. First of all, I've always respected the triangle of the school, the parent, and the teachers, equal participants in shaping a person's learning journey. And I think parents are the most underutilized resource really in shaping a good education journey for students. Parents are not simply supposed to drop off their children and hope for the best. I want every parent to be, fully engaged, fully switched on. And you might have heard this said, one or two times in the past, that when your child goes to school, you go to school as well alongside them. And as a parent myself, I am as invested in my child's education as I am in my own journey in life. So I want to say to parents out there, thank you for being engaged. Thank you for being switched on. Thank you for investing as much as you can, as much as you have. The UWC movement is one of the best really at engaging parents that I have seen anywhere in the world. Parents are involved at many different levels, selection, fundraising, feedback. The parents are really, really switched on. So don't stop. As we go forward, I think parents can do a whole lot more to help to really expand opportunities. I've seen many instances in which parents have helped to find internships and jobs for students, have extended their own connections to help to bring in more scholarships. Parents go above and beyond to support the movement and what the movement becomes. So whether you are supporting the school with feedback about what is working and what can be done better, whether you're supporting the school with introductions to friends and other people who should know about what is going on, whether you're opening up your own personal professional network to help to create more opportunities for your own children and for other people's children, whether you're just making a lot of noise about UWC and how awesome it is that we're doing what we're doing. All of those things are valuable, and I hope you don't stop doing what you're doing.
Hi, I'm Ishana, a grade 11 student from UWC Dover, and I just want to start off by saying that I'm really grateful to be here in person and be a part of this discussion. So throughout the evening, there was a lot of talk about challenges and changes that need to be made. And so I was wondering if you could explain what some of the bigger challenges are that are facing the education sector and how UWC is tackling them and how the UWC movement can improve to tackle these challenges better.
How much time do you have? Because that's a broad question. It's a very, very big and important question. So maybe I'll touch on 2 or 3 raging topics in the space of education and what I think we are and can do a whole lot better on. I think firstly on the subject of teaching and learning itself, like we talked about earlier, there's this huge space in which we've been pushed away from how we normally like to learn, close to each other, investing time in person and fitting off people's verbal and nonverbal cues in the classroom. That's a huge challenge. We're dealing with a terrible pandemic. I'm almost convinced it's going to be another one. So this is not time to slow down and just wish for it to go away. This is time for us to double down on reshaping how our learning needs to look like once this is gone and another one replaces it, right? We might not ever return into what used to be. So we've got to be open to thinking about how we retain the core elements of the education that we treasure while dealing with a vastly different reality. I don't know the answer. Our best experts don't know the answer to that. But again, I love questions. So let's stay with that question a little bit longer and figure out what teaching and learning would look like in the next wave of humanity. So that's number one. Secondly, we've paid a lot of attention, and we should, to mental health and well-being of students and teachers, might I add, because we talk about students a lot and we ignore the teachers who are going through this as well. And so if you're a teacher out there listening to me, I've got your back. I know what you're going through. I hope we can get out of this together. But here's the point. How do we design learning systems and experiences that allow people to thrive, not simply to cope, right? And lots of people are not coping. Lots of people are being pushed to the edge, whether through isolation or rigor or just feeling stretched and really, really strained in the capacity to handle what's coming at them. This is important to me, and I must let you know that I've been in several conversations, even up until over the weekend as well, with lots of people across the movement who are very, very keen to help to find some common approaches that can help to ease the burden of mental challenges and stress that we're all going through. So there's work being done. Trust your counselors. I know that lots of young people don't trust the counselors, you don't trust your psychologists and the wellness staff. Please trust them. I believe they're doing the absolute best they can to look after you. Use the services they've got on offer. Speak to someone if you find yourself being pushed to the wall, but use the resources that are there. So mental health and well-being in general will always be a huge area of focus. A third area that I'll just touch on briefly is around assessments and personalized learning. It's a huge area of focus as well, as we realize now that people are really on individual journeys, right? And a cookie cutter approach where we simply pass everyone through the same system is not responsible, right? Not everyone learns the same way. Not everyone imbibes information the same way. Not everyone enjoys the same kinds of assessment. it's an area of emerging work. I wouldn't say that we are there or that we are good at it across the world, but from the university level all the way down, people are asking critical questions around what the future of assessment needs to look like. How do we allow people to, learn in bits and pieces and certify their knowledge on an ongoing basis if possible? These are all really, really important areas of work, and what impact that has for the future of our work remains to be seen. But be assured that these debates will not evade the UWC movement. We're going to be in those debates. We're going to be part of shaping the future of what those answers look like. And I'm going to be in those conversations. I want to be on your behalf and on the behalf of those who are coming behind you. So lots and lots to unpack really, but I'm just kind of zooming through them. If we stay with those three for a while, we'll get a lot out of those answers and lots more to think about.
So my name is Adia, and I'm a grade 11 student in UWC Dover campus currently. And first of all, I just wanted to say I'm so honored to be here today and I'm so glad I've had the chance to hear you speak today, Faith. And so this question is directed to all of you. I was mainly to Miss Elliot, Ruth, and Anthony, and I was wondering, from having this honor of Faith joining us in UWC, what would the three of you expect and kind of want from him, and what would you want to take away from his presence in our UWC movement?
Ask the students to say first what they think.
So Faith, I think the most important thing for me is that I'm very glad that you want to hear from the students themselves. I think this really reflects on like you as a person. It's very big for you to actually step down and want to hear from us, because I know there are levels of protocols and there are levels of which you could have got all this information, but you wanted to hear from us. And I think this is something big. And what I want from this is like, I really hope to see you engaging with students more, like really wanting to be engaged in a lot of our service programs that we do at school, really wanting to be engaged in the campus and really having like a few calls with us here and there, wanting to find out from the students themselves what is happening and how do you feel about this. So that's really, really something I wish to see happening forward. And because I think you are an amazing person and your profile is awesome, and we really want to hear from you and learn from you as a person. So seeing you more often, having more conversation with you would really be an honor.
I think first and foremost, you're sort of an inspiring role model for all of us, given sort of the change that we've been involved in policy and education. I completely agree with what Ruth said about sort of wanting to hear the students. And in addition to hearing the students, I also think, given sort of my involvement in student council over the past 3 years in high school, an important part, I think, is getting students to be involved in some of the decisions that go behind UWC International and some of the thinking there. So I would really be looking forward to seeing how the school, especially the students, can work with UWC International from all our campuses to sort of collectively shape the future of the UWC mission.
So Faith, it's not for me to disagree with either Anthony or Ruth. I think they know so much better than I do what we need from you, as it were. But one thing, if I might offer just a piece of advice to bring those voices together, is the UWC International Movement is planning its next Congress in the next year, 18 months, I think. So I think actually being able to inform the discussions there and make some informed decisions perhaps around the future of education and our role in it, being able to engage the students in those big decisions, both in terms of preparing for the Congress and in hearing from the different regions where the schools are based, the different models of schools and so on, and hearing those different perspectives, giving voice to the students in doing that, and then working out how that can be most generative for the movement as a whole. So bringing those voices together in a way that helps move us forward with some of these big questions that we're all facing at the moment. So that's what I personally would really like to see happen. And I know that you have that in you as well. So I think we look forward to celebrating that with you together as well.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. Anthony and Ruth, you have my commitment. Thank you. You have an open door to me whenever you want it, and your peers as well.
Thank you, Faith. So we have time for just 2 more questions. I'm going to ask one that's come in online, and then we're going to finish up with one from a student. This one is for Faith and Karma together, and it's really about the future of the movement in terms of geographically where you both think it should be focused, and also about the structure of the movement. So it's sort of twofold, also about how does the international office work with the schools and colleges, and where do you see the next wave of schools and colleges coming? So wanting to hear from both Faith and Karma on that.
Karma, do you want to take a stab? Or no?
Okay.
You want to pass it to me? Yeah.
Well, I'm not happy to have a stab at it. So I think the most important thing is mission alignment. So wherever it is in the world, you know, the individuals who wish to establish a school and who have supporters locally to make it happen, you know, that's the most important thing, I think, to get, you know, to bring a community together around a vision and the mission for the future. So the mission as a sort of compass to bring people together, and then, you know, build a sustainable school, a sustainable model. So I think wherever that happens and whatever form the school takes. So I think we've seen, and we referenced it before, that the 2-year model is one that is successful in the context where that has long been the practice in individual schools and colleges. But equally, the K-12 model has also proven to be a successful model as well, and a very impactful model. And most recently into the movement, there have been more schools joining the movement, which are a K-12 or a through school model. So I think reflecting on some of those as to what, you know, what the balance is perhaps between those, you know, the different types of school and within their local context as well, I think is very important. And the big growth at the moment, of course, in recent years has been in Asia. I think it's important that we look towards how we reach out to underrepresented regions as well. So the global South in particular, and perhaps South America. I know that some of the fellow heads in the movement really regret the loss of, there was previously a university in the movement, the Simon Bolivar in South America. Whether or not there are other models that might be of interest as well around a shared mission and a shared vision for the future as well. So I hope that those are the kind of conversations that we'll be having at the International Board and beyond in the next few years. So to you now, Faith. Thank you.
Of course, and I agree entirely with your sentiments there, Karma, that there are lots of experiments that we can have around what the future of education looks like. And one of the beauties for me of the UWC movement is the plurality of voices that we've got, and every voice is valuable. And so I'm open to learning as much as possible about the various ways in which we can bring this movement to life in different parts of the world. But we can certainly agree on the fact that we can be more present in many more places. Every chance we have to extend our brand of education is one that I think we should embrace. And there'll be people who think slightly differently, there'll be people who have different approaches, but UWC should not be a secret. It should be for the world. And every chance we have to extend that impact to the whole world, I will take it.
Hi, my name is Radhika. I'm a grade 11 student at UWC Dover. So first, I just want to say that I'm really happy to be here, and I've really enjoyed listening to all of you talk. So this last question is for all 4 of you, because we've all had different experiences with UWC, and we've been talking about the merits of the movement. So I just wanted to ask y'all, what is like one thing, if somebody just like comes in touch with the movement, what is one thing that you want them to take away from our mission and what like the movement is about?
Shall we hand over to Ruth first?
Yeah, sure. I'd like by starting off saying that I think you are never fully prepared, or you can never envision yourself as to how the mission shaped you. Like when I joined, I really wanted that diverse perspective. I wanted to work with people from different backgrounds. but then I never knew it have this big impact in my life, whether I'm this open-minded person, I'm this person that can work well with other people. And so that's really that change that you feel and that you see when you join the movement. It's that you get to work with amazing teachers, amazing staff, amazing people, amazing students. And what you get from that is that diverse perspective, that idea of like that curiosity of able to looking for answers beyond just your academics or anything. And that's something that I was never prepared for. That's something I didn't think about. And then now that I'm in year 12 and now that I'm reflecting a bit on my journey, I can clearly say that I've grown and I'm a different person from what I've expected of what I've ever thought of.
Perspective. I think the biggest thing I've learned, like since I come to UWC, is sort of a sense of belief, almost like a faith in a sense. Because I feel that sort of young people may be a bit cynical about some of the problems that the world faces. Sort of, for example, climate change is a huge one. But what the UWC mission has given me, like sort of surrounded by sort of all these young people and teachers and parents who are all passionate about the mission and who all have this common vision, which they sort of work around in their different ways, has been a quite inspiring experience in the sense that, yes, that I now have this belief that together we can possibly shape the future and that I can play a part in shaping that future in ways big or small.
Well, I think two things here. First of all, Anthony, you really spoke my mind here on the sense of belief. I was going to say a sense of possibility, and secondly, a sense of agency, right? That things can be done and I can do something about those things. Anyone who encounters UWC should walk away with those two senses. There's a sense of possibility. Nothing is too big, nothing is too difficult. And secondly, perhaps I'm the person who can take a step forward and do something about it. Never underestimate the importance of inspiration and enthusiasm and energy. And when you build a community in which people are facing down challenges with joy and with excitement, that is priceless. So for everyone, appreciate this opportunity that you have to experience the sense of possibility and the sense of agency, and come along. We're still getting started. We've got lots more to do. The young people we're speaking with today, they are the leaders of today and tomorrow. They're going to be here for a while. They will make a huge difference. It's an honor for me to walk this journey with you all and to be a part of your experiences. And thank you for opening the door to allow me to journey with you.
Faith, and I think picking up from what's been said so far, the idea of possibility and opportunity, and the fact that, Kurt Hahn all those years ago said there is more in us. And I think it is that idea of, the curiosity around what is that more? What more could we do together? What more could we be doing together across the movement around sharing and co-creating and so on? And that's an immense sense of possibility, I think. So, and that's really alive and well in you and in the conversation we've had tonight. So thank you, Faith, for that. Thank you.
Wow, and on that incredibly optimistic note of faith and of possibility, it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Karma, to Ruth, to Anthony, to all our students in the room this evening, and of course to Faith for joining us for this conversation. Thank you all for being with us this evening and wish you all the very best. Happy birthday to UWCSEA, and we hope that we will see you again soon for our next speaker series event. Good night.